Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Just imagine having a microchip implanted in your hand as proof of vaccination. More and more people in Sweden are doing just that in the wake of the new COVID restrictions.
Other Europeans are joining in massive, sometimes violent protests over vaccine requirements. So what's happening here in the United States in response to the Omicron variant? Dale Hurd has the details.
The World Health Organization admits there is yet to be a single death from the Omicron variant. But that hasn't stopped some governments, especially in Europe, from using it as another reason to enact mandatory vaccination laws. Here in the U.S., Omicron cases are now confirmed in at least 17 states.
We have several dozen cases, and we're following them closely, and we are every day hearing about more and more probable cases.
But so far, Omicron does not seem to be dangerous. Initial studies show it has a similar genetic structure to the common cold, making it more transmissible. But in South Africa, where Omicron first emerged, hospitalizations have not increased significantly.
We really got to be careful before we make any determinations. But thus far, the signals are a bit encouraging regarding the severity.
Peter McGinn of Minnesota tested positive for Omicron after a visit to New York City. He had been fully vaccinated and received a booster.
Kind of feeling that tired. I kind of felt bad for about a day. Did my absolute best to follow the guidelines. I had my mask on the entire time.
COVID guidelines and restrictions have become a significant issue in Europe, where some nations are requiring citizens to be vaccinated. And that has sparked massive and sometimes violent demonstrations across the continent. This Belgian woman says, "I don't agree with the mandatory vaccinations because these vaccines, I don't think they're great yet." In Spain, this college professor says the dead from COVID-19 are mostly vaccinated people instead of non-vaccinated. That's in all hospitals. This woman says, "We don't want the COVID-19 passport. We want freedom. It's a human right. We don't want vaccines for us or our children. This is genocide." Austria has announced it plans to become the first country in Europe to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory. Germany plans on making vaccinations compulsory for certain jobs. European Union leader Ursula von der Leyen says it's time for the EU to discuss a Europe-wide vaccine mandate. And in Sweden, increasing numbers of people have implanted microchips with proof of their vaccination into their hands since the nation announced new COVID restrictions. When scanned, all of a person's information about their vaccination status is shown on a reader or phone. It's also a way to link devices implanted in your body to the internet. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, microchips aren't coming to America anytime soon, but it does boggle your mind that people in Sweden would actually volunteer for that, to have a microchip implanted, and so that they could go to restaurants and go to stores and conduct business. So you look at these developments and you really shake your head and go, what in the world's going on? But here's another more serious development, and you're not going to see that story about European protests against the vaccine and people within those various nations saying, I don't want to take a vaccine at all, and the government should never mandate that we take a vaccine. You're not going to see that story in the U.S. news because it doesn't fit the narrative. Here's a Google search for you. You can go to Google News and type in the word evangelical, then another word white, and then type in vaccine, and you'll be amazed at the number of stories that come up that are specifically trying to demonize the white evangelical community for somehow being anti-vaccine. I think it's religious bigotry of an enormous level. I mean, these are not fringe groups on the internet. This is the New York Times. This is the Washington Post. This is the Wall Street Journal. And this past weekend, it was Yale University that put out some kind of study of how to convince white evangelicals to get the vaccine. I'm a white evangelical. I have the vaccine. I know a lot of white evangelicals who have the vaccine. White evangelicals doesn't mean that you're anti-vax. But at the same time, we shouldn't impose it. This should never come down as a government mandate. People have the right to their own bodily security. You can't mandate this kind of thing. Now, have vaccines been mandated before? Sure, polio, smallpox, but you're dealing with infections that have horrible consequences where there's no cure. Here with COVID, is there a death rate? Yes. But at the same time, it's not a devastating thing. It's not some kind of emergency. So let's take a giant step back and stop the narrative that somehow this is racist or white nationalism or some kind of political narrative you're trying to advance. This is religious bigotry. I'm going to call it for what it is, and it should stop. In other news, Israel's security forces are on high alert after 2 Palestinian attacks. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. That high alert came after the second attack occurred this morning. A Palestinian teenager took his father's car and rammed it into an Israeli security guard at a checkpoint in the West Bank, seriously injuring him. The assailant was shot by security forces and later died at a nearby hospital. Today's ramming assault followed an attack Saturday when Israeli police killed a Palestinian who stabbed an ultra-Orthodox Jewish man near the Damascus Gate outside Jerusalem's Old City. That assault sparked accusations against police for shooting the attacker twice, but police later released the entire video showing he had repeatedly lunged at them. Hamas praised the stabbing as a new heroism. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett commended the actions of the police. Well, back here in the United States, tributes have poured in from both sides of the aisle for former Republican Senator Bob Dole, who died Sunday at the age of 98. Dole was a wounded World War II hero who served in Congress from Kansas for nearly 36 years. He was also the Republican nominee for president in 1996, losing to incumbent President Bill Clinton. Clinton was among those praising Dole, as did President Biden and former Presidents Trump, Obama, Bush, and Carter, along with accolades from Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, and many other top political figures. Flags are flying at half-mast at both the White House and on Capitol Hill. The Salvation Army is trying to clear the air and move forward with its Christmas campaign after responding to criticisms that it promoted critical race theory in training material. The Army again is rejecting accusations of so-called wokeism from earlier this year. In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Commissioner Kenneth Hodder told me its mission remains the same as always.
Salvation Army today is the same Salvation Army that people have known since its inception 156 years ago. We endorse no theory, no philosophy other than that found in the Scriptures. The mission of the Salvation Army is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and meet human needs in His name without discrimination.
Hodder added that the Army was not going to take positions on CRT or social theories, saying once you go down that road, it's impossible to extricate yourself. Well, the Advent season has begun. For many families, it's a busy time of the year. So one mom is working to help instill calm as many prepare to celebrate the birth of Christ. CBN's Jennifer Wishon shows us how.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, but let's face it, for many families, Christmas time is chaotic. There are parties to plan, cookies to bake, gifts to buy, and after all the hustle, many people find themselves depleted come Christmas Eve. Mother and grandmother Melissa Carey has been there.
I really want to empower and equip moms with a way to take the chaos out of Christmas, how to have an intentional, peaceful Advent.
Carrie says she's longed for an Advent calendar that goes deeper than Mary, Joseph, and some camels.
I wanted more from the nativity set. I wanted more from the Advent calendar than stale chocolates. I knew that there was something so much richer and deeper to the story.
So she made one that you too can enjoy.
I looked at what the world had to offer in nativity scenes and creches, and then I looked at what the Word had to offer. What's in the Word about the Nativity? You know, what does the Bible tell us? And that's what I modeled the Christmas cabinet after.
Each day of Advent, families can open a drawer in her Christmas cabinet to find a piece of the story of Christ's birth.
These are completely biblically accurate. And for me, it was really important to start with the concept of atonement. Atonement is a really hard concept to understand, but it's the whole reason Jesus came. And so we start on the very first day with the high priest Zechariah going into the Holy of Holies to offer a sin atonement.
Advent. She includes a book which offers biblical and historical text for each day of Advent, along with a question to immerse families deeper into the miraculous story.
Well, one of my favorite days is Bethlehem, and we talk about how Bethlehem is a very small village just a few miles south of Jerusalem. And we weave in the history of the Old Testament, and we weave in the prophecies. The prophet Micah says that from Bethlehem will come the Savior of the world. And my favorite part is Bethlehem. Anytime you see Beth, it means house of, but Bethlehem means house of bread, which is amazing because Jesus calls himself the bread of life.
Carrie's Christmas cabinet even includes a bag of real frankincense.
So it's really important for me to look at the historical significance of each one of the figures, tie in the Old Testament prophecies, the New Testament teachings, as well as the application from biblical history.
She's in awe of stories about how God is using her product, but she also offers free resources on her website for each day of Advent. For her, it's all about sharing the true meaning of Christmas.
The figure for December 24th is a Christmas gift. And we talk about how God sent Jesus as the best gift we could ever receive. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that each and every one of us who believe in him shall not perish but have eternal life.
Now Carrie has the Advent calendar she always wanted, and you can too. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Arlington, Virginia.
Great story, Jennifer. If you'd like to learn more about the Christmas cabinet, all you need to do is go to our website, cbnnews.com. Gordon?
Let me encourage you and all families that celebrate Advent. It's a wonderful way to teach your children and have them participate in lighting the Advent candles. And while you're at it, celebrate Hanukkah. We celebrate Hanukkah in my family, and we have had Seder services. These are the appointed feasts. We celebrate Rosh Hashanah here at CBN every year. We have a celebration for it. These are the appointed feasts of the Lord, the appointed times, and it's a wonderful teaching mechanism for children. Get them involved in the process. It's one of the great secrets of Judaism is children are involved. They're involved in the Shabbat candle. They're involved in every Seder service, from the youngest to the eldest. Get them involved. It's a wonderful way to carry on the faith for the next generation.